Let's start with a discussion of what ServiceNow is. ServiceNow is a company, but it's also their product. So when we talk about ServiceNow, the product, it's this platform upon which they've built a whole bunch of tools that we use. Some of them we use at BYU, some of them we don't. We'll go through some of the specific tools from ServiceNow that we use on the ServiceNow platform. One of the cool things that I've really admired about ServiceNow is when they acquire new companies, which they've done a whole bunch of that, they don't just turn on the new acquisitions immediately, but they spend a year or two and they re-platform all of the purchased functionality so that it runs natively on their platform. Rather than having to learn 6 new tools, now you learn one way of doing things on the ServiceNow platform and you administer the whole thing with the same amount of facility. So it really provides some opportunities for scaling multiple tools in the platform that I found to be kind of unique. You can see on this slide that they're a pretty huge company now. When BYU started with ServiceNow back in 2008, I think is when we first started doing our discovery work with ServiceNow. A couple of different groups at ServiceNow had independently discovered them at different conferences and became intrigued. We had a homegrown application written in Cold Fusion that was our service catalog website for the campus to use to make requests of OIT. And so we wanted to get that off of a homegrown solution and onto a commercial tool. And so we selected ServiceNow at that time to be our tool for a service catalog. And then we spread to do incident management and some other things on top of the platform as it's grown in the subsequent years. But we started with that modest beginning. In fact, when we started, ServiceNow was a small enough company, they didn't really have a formal training organization. When James Fair, who was our first system administrator, and I went as his backup, we went to a little conference room in Manhattan for their kind of semi-formal administrator training, and some of the early ServiceNow developers were sitting there in the room to answer the questions and to make sure that the trainer was saying things kind of in the right way. The platform has grown a lot since that day, but it's been fun for BYU to grow along with ServiceNow and do some innovative and unique things in those early days of the platform. So let's look at the parts of the platform that we are using. IT Service Management, or ITSM, is the main thing we are licensed to use on the platform. We have the most licenses for IT Service Management. IT Service Management is most visible to campus in incident management. This is when something is broken, you file an incident record with OIT, and we create an incident record in ServiceNow to track what's going on with that. But IT Service Management goes beyond that. That's where we track not only incidents, but major incidents, our problems. All of our change and release tracking happens there. The service catalog or request management happens in there. We track things about what services we offer and what the service levels should be for those services. So there's lots of things that are in there. We have the IT operations management, or the IT service management professional SKU. That's what we get from ServiceNow. So if you're ever reading public documentation and you wonder what we have, that's the one we're currently licensed for. The base of the platform is the configuration management database. That's the list of all of our stuff, our servers and our applications and how they relate together. So that configuration management database shows all of those things. And then sitting on top of that configuration management database are all of the operations that we do, the tasks and the things that are in the platform. So IT Service Management, that's our main license. These are the licenses that we'll be using with different CSR groups on campus. So when a CSR group wants to be able to share ServiceNow functionality with us to see what IT can see, that is the license we'll be granting to them as an ITSM Pro license so that they can see our shared incidents and our shared CMDB records. They won't have a license to all of the other things that we're going to show, but this is the shared piece that we expect to be the most broadly used on campus. Here are some of the other parts that we do have. So IT operations management is for our group to be able to actively reach out and discover the things that are on campus, to find the servers, to find those network attached devices, and so that we can automatically put those into the configuration management database and then track who the owners of those things are. We want to know all the websites, we want to know all the computers and all the servers and all the applications on campus, so that when something goes awry, that we know who to contact to get that addressed, to get that fixed, to get that remediated if there needs to be a remediation. So the operations management is how we do that, especially using the discovery and service mapping functions. We have ITOM visibility. That's the SKU that we have in the IT operations management domain. And so if you're looking at ServiceNow documentation, that ITOM visibility may be a useful name to know if you're reading that documentation. Next, we have IT asset management. Now, there are there is basic IT asset management. We only have the standard level. And it's kind of funny the way that they break this down. You can't even see the standard level listed as what this is. But this basically lets us just have the list of our assets. Can I list out what they are? What are my physical or virtual assets, contracts, or whatever we want to track? We can track those as assets from a simple way, but we don't have all of the fancy pro level functionality that IT asset management could provide on the platform. We just keep the very simple one that syncs with the configuration management database. But that's what that is, and that's what that looks like. We have licenses in OIT for the strategic portfolio management. Not all of OIT has these licenses, but most of OIT does. The strategic portfolio management is their project management and project planning module. This is where I can say, here are the things I want to do over the next 6 months, 1 year, 5 years, and then how do those things tie back to my goals, to my long-term institutional priorities? So SPM is the way of doing project planning and project execution. We mostly use the Agile 2.0 application in ServiceNow. This is the Scrum-oriented project operations module that lets us use stories and then put those stories into sprints and releases. So that's the biggest way we use that in ServiceNow. We're licensed to use a whole bunch more of those pieces, but those are the pieces that we currently have. We don't have SPM Professional. We just have SPM Standard. But we have SPM Standard with the Agile connector so that we can use some of these extra Agile features, just because historically we had those before they split it out into a separate license, and so they've continued to let us use that Agile functionality. So that's been pretty nice for us that we get to continue to have access to use that piece of it without paying for the more expensive SPM Pro licenses. We have integrated risk management. This is our SOC uses this, the Security Operations Center. They want to be able to track, there's all these laws or regulations or IT standards that we want to track. These are policies that we want to comply with. So the IRM module, the integrated risk management module, is going to allow us to match those policies with all of our stuff, all of our applications or our servers or our physical devices, whatever they are. We can say, how well do these things comply with these policies? We're going to be able to track our risk and our compliance with this tool. This is just in the midst of being implemented, so we just have a handful of licenses to make this happen, but it's just part of our current licensing for ServiceNow, and it'll be kind of fun to see how that helps us be more secure and more compliant with the expected things that we're doing. Business continuity management, this is disaster recovery. This is if there's an earthquake or a fire, what are you going to do on your campus to recover from that thing? So because we want to do this, we're doing discovery and service mapping as part of our CMDB to find out what our stuff is, what our applications rely on, and then we can build plans that say, if some sort of a crisis occurs, what should be our response? And then we can document that response. We can have those documents at hand so that in the crisis, we can then follow through on that playbook that we put together in advance. And so there's cool work that's happening in business continuity management using ServiceNow to do that. Underneath a lot of these things, they have a low-code tool called App Engine. The App Engine Studio is what we're starting to use, just getting started with granting people rights to do this for a limited set of purposes. The App Engine in ServiceNow is a low-code platform. It could compete with something like Mendix, but we're using it for a narrower scope in OIT. We're using it just for those things that run on top of the ServiceNow platform that relate to the processes that are already happening in ServiceNow, rather than trying to do it for any process on campus the way Mendix can do. The App Engine, we're using it for ordering interfaces, the workflows that are associated with ordering interfaces, or for public portals, where you might search a knowledge base or make those things available. So for some of our groups on campus, we're starting to do this delegated development. We're going through the growing pains of that right now, trying to learn how that delegated development should work so that we don't have to have our central admins do everything. App Engine Studio is the way that we're making that work. All of these tools rely on an underlying automation engine in ServiceNow. ServiceNow is really good at connecting to other systems. So they have something called the Integration Hub that the workflows can use. They have spokes that can reach out to other systems. And then we can write our own spokes, our own web service calls to other systems. We can import things from spreadsheets or flat files, and we can write out things to spreadsheets or flat files, or we can read directly from databases, in or out of databases, through on-premises, what they call a mid server. So ServiceNow has really robust integration capabilities across several modes that allow us to tie into our existing systems in other ways, so that ServiceNow wants ServiceNow to be, they want their platform to be the system of interaction. They don't need it to be the system of record. It doesn't need to replace your ERP or your HR system. It just needs to be the they would like it to be the place where you can easily orchestrate activities across multiple systems, and then have supporting functions that are there. So that's kind of the basis of what ServiceNow does and what we're licensed to use at BYU.